In the year 711 AD, the calm of the Iberian Peninsula was shattered by the sound of hooves and the clash of swords. An army of Arabs and Berbers, driven by the zeal of their faith, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and launched an assault on the Christian kingdom of the Visigoths. Within a few years, nearly the entire Iberian Peninsula fell under Muslim control. The once mighty Visigoth kingdom crumbled, and a new era began, one marked by the clash of three great monotheistic religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. This dramatic event was not an isolated incident. It was part of a larger tapestry of religious and cultural conflicts that defined the Middle Ages in Europe. The world was changing, and the old ways were giving way to new beliefs and new powers. The story of medieval Europe is a story of this transformation, a story of how the continent was shaped by the interplay of these three monotheistic religions. Before the Middle Ages, Europe was a land of polytheistic beliefs. The ancient Greeks and Romans worshipped a pantheon of gods, each with their own domains and personalities. The Romans, in particular, were known for their tolerance. They allowed conquered peoples to continue worshipping their own gods, as long as they paid homage to the Roman state. This openness allowed for a diverse and rich religious landscape, but it also meant that there was no unifying belief system. However, the Middle Ages marked a significant shift. The rise of monotheism brought a new kind of religious fervor. Christianity, which had started as a small sect in the Roman Empire, grew into a dominant force. By the 4th century, it had become the official religion of the Roman Empire. The spread of Christianity was not without resistance. It often faced opposition from polytheistic populations, who were reluctant to abandon their traditional beliefs. The process of Christianization was long and arduous, with some regions, like Lithuania, not fully converting until the late 14th century. But Christianity was not the only monotheistic religion to gain a foothold in Europe. Judaism, an ancient religion with roots in the Near East, had a significant presence in many parts of the continent. Jewish communities were established in cities like Rome, Spain, and southern France. Despite facing periods of persecution, Jews maintained their traditions and contributed to the cultural and intellectual life of medieval Europe. The third monotheistic religion to enter the European stage was Islam. Starting in the 7th century, Islam spread rapidly from the Arabian Peninsula. By the 8th century, it had reached the borders of Europe. The Islamic conquests brought a new layer of complexity to the religious landscape. In Spain, for example, the coexistence of Christians, Jews, and Muslims created a unique cultural environment. The city of Cordoba, under Muslim rule, became a center of learning and tolerance, where scholars of different faiths exchanged ideas and knowledge. The coexistence of these three monotheistic religions was not always peaceful. Schisms and heresies within each religion led to internal conflicts, and the interactions between the religions often resulted in tensions and violence. The Crusades, for instance, were a series of holy wars fought between Christians and Muslims over control of the Holy Land. These conflicts had far-reaching consequences, shaping the political and social landscape of Europe for centuries. Despite the conflicts, there were also moments of cooperation and mutual respect. The shared belief in one God, who had created the world, meant that the followers of these religions had to engage with each other, even if it was through debate and controversy. This engagement fostered a dynamic and complex cultural environment, where ideas and beliefs were constantly being tested and redefined. The Middle Ages, therefore, were a time of both conflict and integration. The interactions between different religious and cultural groups created a rich and diverse tapestry of medieval Europe. The story of this period is not just about the rise and fall of empires, but about the interplay of beliefs and the ways in which they shaped the lives of people. As we delve deeper into this story, we will explore the many facets of medieval Europe, from the great battles and political struggles to the everyday lives of people. We will see how the Middle Ages laid the foundations for the modern world, a world that continues to grapple with the complexities of religious and cultural diversity. In the Middle Ages, the world was much more connected than many people think. Imagine a big map where different parts of the world were linked by a network of trade routes. These routes connected China in the east to Western Europe in the west, and they were used to trade goods, ideas, and even art. The sea routes were especially important. Coastal cities became key stations on these routes, connecting the long-distance trade with the inland areas. These cities were like stops on a grand highway, where merchants, travelers, and even new ideas could stop and exchange. The Black Sea and the Levant, a region including modern-day Israel, Lebanon, and parts of Syria, were at the center of this network. Whoever controlled the passages between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, such as Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf in the east, and the Nile and the Red Sea in the west, held a very powerful position. The Persians, Alexander the Great, and the Romans all understood this. In the early 8th century, the Muslims took control and became a central force, linking the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. For a long time, the Muslims controlled the important trade routes on land and sea. But as the years went by, Western traders from cities like Amalfi, Venice, Genoa, and Pisa became more involved. They pushed into the eastern Mediterranean and even set up colonies as far as the Black Sea. The rise of the Mongol Empire in the 13th century further strengthened the position of these Italian merchants, who could now participate in the Central Asian trade. However, by the mid-14th century, Western Europeans found it harder to reach the Far East. This was partly because of the Black Death, a terrible pandemic that spread along the same trade routes that had once connected the world. One of the most interesting ideas about this period comes from a historian named Janet Abu-Lughod. She argued that between 1250 and 1350, a world system existed that facilitated trade and cultural exchange from northwest Europe to China. This system was not a single unified network, but rather a series of connected regions. Merchants didn't travel from the Atlantic to the China Sea. Instead, goods moved through a series of hubs. Abu-Lughod identified three main cultures: East Asian, Arabic, and Western. She also noted 8 economic subsystems, including the European system, which was centered around the Champagne fairs, Flemish cities like Bruges and Ghent, and the Italian maritime republics of Genoa and Venice. Germany played a smaller role, mainly through the city of Cologne and the Alpine passes. The key point is that this system was balanced between the East and the West, and any part could have become dominant. This balance meant that the medieval world system could have led to Chinese dominance, which would have changed the course of history. Historians are only just beginning to explore the global history of the Middle Ages. This new perspective is changing how we understand the past. Europe, which later became a dominant force, was once at the edge of a world controlled by Muslim and Asian traders. The Mediterranean, which was so important in ancient times, had lost some of its significance by the Middle Ages. Even though the idea of a medieval world system is fascinating, it's important to remember that this is just one way of looking at history. There are many other stories and perspectives to consider. For example, the daily lives of people in their local communities were probably more important to them than the grand trade routes. In the end, the Middle Ages show us that the world has always been interconnected, even if it wasn't always in the way we might expect. The history of this period is a reminder that the world is a complex place, and that understanding it requires looking at many different angles. In 1977, a big and important exhibition opened in Stuttgart, a city in southern Germany. The exhibition was called The Age of the Stauffer, and it showed many fascinating objects from the High Middle Ages. The organizers hoped that 200,000 people would visit, but nearly 675,000 people came to see it. This shows how much people are interested in the Middle Ages, especially when it's part of their own history and culture. The exhibition made the past feel close and familiar, even though it was from a long time ago. Stuttgart is the capital of the German state, called Baden-Württemberg. The state government organized this exhibition to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Baden-Württemberg. The state was formed in 1952 by combining the former territories of Baden and Württemberg. At first, the people from these two areas didn't get along very well. They had different histories and sometimes didn't like each other. The government wanted to use this exhibition to help create a shared sense of history and identity for the people of Baden-Württemberg. The Prime Minister Hans Filbinger said that the region was once united during the medieval period, when it was the core of the Duchy of Swabia. This shared medieval history was used to show that the people of Baden and Württemberg had a common heritage, which could help them feel more connected. In the 19th century, the Stauffer dynasty was already a significant part of Germany's historical memory. Historians and politicians used the Stauffer era to argue for a united Germany. They believed that Germany had once been a powerful empire under the Stauffer emperors, and that this glory should be restored. This idea became even more important after the failed revolution of 1848, when Germany was still divided into many small states. Historians like Wilhelm Giesebrecht wrote books that emphasized the greatness of the medieval German Empire. Giesebrecht's book, The History of the German Imperial Era, was very influential. He said that during the Imperial Age, Germany was strong and powerful, and that the country should long for those times. However, the way people thought about medieval history became more complicated over time. The idea wasn't just to say, "We had it once and it was good, so we want it back." Instead, people began to imagine that the medieval empire still existed, but in a hidden, secret way. This is what Isaiah Berlin called political romanticism. One of the most famous examples of this is the myth of Emperor Barbarossa. The myth says that Barbarossa is sleeping in a mountain called Kifhasser, waiting for the right time to wake up and restore the empire. This myth was very popular in the 19th century and was used to support the idea of a united Germany. In the 1850s and 1860s, historians like Heinrich von Seibel and Julius Ficker had a big argument about how to interpret medieval history. Seibel, who was from Prussia, argued that the medieval emperors should have focused more on expanding eastward rather than in Italy. He was promoting the idea of a small German empire led by Prussia. Ficker, who was from Austria, defended the idea of a great German empire that included Austria. Both historians used medieval history to support their political views. This use of history to justify political goals continued into the 20th century. The Nazis, for example, used medieval history to justify their expansionist policies. They named their invasion of Austria Operation Otto, and their invasion of Russia Operation Barbarossa. They even referred to their mass murders as Program Heinrich, named after King Henry I. This shows how the Nazis tried to use medieval history to make their actions seem legitimate, even though it had nothing to do with real history. So, the way people in Germany thought about medieval history was closely tied to their political goals. Whether it was to unite Baden and Württemberg, to create a united Germany, or to justify aggressive policies, the Middle Ages were a powerful tool for shaping people's ideas about their nation. In the 1800s, Germany was a collection of small states, each with its own ruler. Many people dreamed of a united Germany, but it wasn't the middle-class reformers who made this dream come true. Instead, it was a powerful politician named Otto von Bismarck who united Germany from the top down. Bismarck became the Prime Minister of Prussia in 1862. Prussia was already the strongest state in Germany, and Bismarck used this strength to fight 3 wars that he called Wars of Unification. After these wars, he created the Second German Empire in 1871. The King of Prussia, William I, became the emperor of this new empire. Bismarck didn't ask the middle-class reformers for their help in unifying Germany. He did it his way, using the power of Prussia. Some people were happy about this, but others, especially in southern Germany and among Catholics, felt that the new empire was too much like Prussia and not enough like the old medieval empire. To make the new empire feel more connected to the past, Bismarck and his supporters used medieval history. They told stories about great emperors like Charlemagne and the Stauffer emperors, especially Frederick Barbarossa. According to a popular myth, Barbarossa was not dead but waiting in a mountain to return when Germany needed him. When the new empire was formed, some people saw it as a fulfillment of this myth, with William I taking over as the new emperor. To celebrate this connection, 2 important monuments were built. The first was the restoration of the Kaiserpfalz in Goslar, an old imperial palace. The painter Hermann Wislicenus was asked to decorate the walls and ceilings with scenes from medieval history, culminating in a grand painting showing William I as the new emperor. The second monument was the Kifhasser Monument, built after William I's death in 1888. At the base there is a statue of Frederick Barbarossa, and above it, a statue of William I on horseback. This monument showed that William I was the rightful successor to Barbarossa, linking the new empire to the glory of the medieval past. However, not everyone was happy with this use of medieval history. Some people in southern Germany and Catholic circles saw it as a way to legitimize Prussian dominance. They rejected this version of history, seeing it as a form of propaganda. The new empire also used medieval history to create a sense of national identity. For example, the Song of the Nibelungs, a medieval epic, was seen as a national epic. It was used to promote German heroism and loyalty. During World War I, the phrase Nibelung loyalty was used to describe the strong bond between Germany and its allies. But there was another, less well-known side to how medieval history was used in Germany. In the 1920s and 1930s, a group of intellectuals around the poet Stefan George developed a concept called secret Germany. They believed that the true Germany was not the one ruled by Prussia and the Hohenzollerns, but a different, more universal Germany. They saw the medieval Emperor Frederick II as a symbol of this secret Germany, a place where different cultures and ideas came together. One of the members of this group was Ernst Kantorowicz, a historian who wrote a famous biography of Frederick II. He described the emperor as a Roman German, a ruler who combined the best of European, Christian, and Eastern cultures. This was a different vision of Germany, one that opposed the nationalistic and militaristic ideas of the time. Kantorowicz's ideas were not popular in the 1930s, especially after the Nazis came to power. He had to leave Germany in 1938 and move to America, where he continued his work on medieval history. The use of medieval history in Germany shows how the past can be used to shape the present. Sometimes it can be a way to unite people, and sometimes it can be a way to resist the dominant narrative. The story of medieval Germany is complex, and its meanings have changed over time, reflecting the hopes and fears of different generations. The story of the Goslar Kaiserpfalz is a tale of ruin and rebirth, intertwined with the broader narrative of Germany's own journey through history. When the city of Goslar became part of the newly formed Kingdom of Hanover in 1814, its most iconic landmark, the 12th and 13th century imperial palace, was in a state of disrepair. After its glory days under the Salian and Staufen dynasties, the palace had been ravaged by fire and lost its imperial status. By 1865, it was on the verge of collapse, a poignant symbol of the medieval empire's decline. However, the citizens of Goslar did not let their historical treasure fall into oblivion. They petitioned the Central Court of Hanover for funds to restore the palace, but the timing was unfortunate. In 1866, the Austro-Prussian War broke out, and Hanover, siding with Austria, was quickly defeated and annexed by Prussia. The deposed King George V fled to Paris, but the people of Goslar were pragmatic. They redirected their request to the new Prussian authorities in Berlin, and, to their delight, received the funds needed to begin the restoration in 1867. The restoration of the Kaiserpfalz was not just a local project. It was part of a larger movement of Romantic historicism that swept through Germany. The Prussian state, often seen as a rigid and militaristic power, was actually quite responsive to the Romantic spirit. This is evident in the restoration of other significant medieval landmarks, such as the Cologne Cathedral and the Marienburg, the former headquarters of the Teutonic Knights. These projects were driven by a growing sense of national pride and a desire to reconnect with the glorious past of the Holy Roman Empire. The restoration of the Kaiserpfalz coincided with a pivotal moment in German history. In 1871, after Prussia's victory over France in the Franco-Prussian War, the German princes gathered in Versailles to proclaim Wilhelm I as the new German emperor. This event marked the re-establishment of the German Empire, seen as a restoration of the imperial dignity that had been lost in 1806 when Napoleon dissolved the Holy Roman Empire. The timing of the Kaiserpfalz restoration and the founding of the German Empire were not lost on the people of Goslar and beyond. They saw the palace's revival as a symbolic parallel to the rebirth of the German nation. When Wilhelm I visited the restoration site in 1875, he did so not just as the King of Prussia, but as the German Emperor. This visit underscored the connection between the past and the present, between the medieval empire and the new German state. The restoration of the Kaiserpfalz was more than just a physical repair. It was a cultural and political statement, a reminder of the rich history that Germany was reclaiming and building upon. The murals inside the restored palace, painted by Hermann Wislicenus, further reinforced this connection. They depicted scenes from the medieval empire, blending historical accuracy with romantic idealization. These murals were a visual representation of the romantic nationalism that was shaping the new German identity. They brought together politics, literature, and art, creating a powerful symbol of a nation reborn. In the end, the story of the Goslar Kaiserpfalz is a story of resilience and renewal. It shows how the past can be a source of strength and inspiration, and how a nation can rise from the ruins of its history to forge a new future. The restored palace stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of Germany, a place where the medieval and the modern meet, and where the past and the present are forever intertwined.